We all saw this comment about Florida State being left out. They had to take Louisville and break off the entire Seminole Nation's foot up inside of the Cardinals in order to get the attention of the College Football Playoff Committee. Certainly if other results came in. And throughout Saturday, those results came in. Texas dismantling Oklahoma State. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, which if I'm not mistaken, you know, Oklahoma got Texas, but Oklahoma State got Oklahoma. So Texas got them all, you know, in the end. And looked terrific in winning the Big 12 championship. And their one loss is against Alabama in week 2 going into Tuscaloosa and winning that game. So when that happened, when Texas beat Oklahoma State about the face and had almost putting a 50-burger up and looking the way that they did in Ewers, 452 yards.
He had like 350 at halftime.
He was terrific. He was terrific. And so that result comes in, and the storm clouds begin to form for Florida State because their quarterback went down a couple of weeks ago. And they haven't looked very good since. And the backup gets concussed. And you begin to see all of this stuff. And then Alabama beats Georgia in the SEC championship game. So when Nick Saban and the Crimson Tide win the SEC championship by handing Georgia its first loss since, COVID?
Feels like it.
And the two-time defending champs don't even win their conference championship. When that happens, it began to truly form the storm clouds above Tallahassee, Florida. Because, you know, you can't take Alabama without taking Texas. Can you? I guess you could.
Yeah.
You can't take Georgia instead of Texas. You can't take Alabama, not Texas, but put the team that Alabama beat in there, can you? Well, yeah, sure you can, because the SEC, it just means more. Greg Sankey, who is a favorite of mine on this program, the SEC commissioner, talking about the Sesame Street theory. You heard about this one?
No. What's this?
He calls it Sesame Street theory. One of these is not like the other. And he's referring to the SEC. Not like the other. They're better. It just means more to them. You know how I've always had a problem with that phrase, it just means more. The SEC, that's their slogan. Just means more. Oh, okay. Like it doesn't mean that much to the rest of us. It just means more to you. You're the best. You're the best around. Nothing's ever going to get you down. Well, certainly not a college football playoff committee, right? They're not going to take 2 SEC teams and leave Texas out, are they? And then Washington beats Oregon on Friday night. So Pac-12's in, right? You're not going to leave out the winner, undefeated winner of arguably the best conference in college football this year.
Deepest.
Certainly not the SEC, it wasn't. And then the Big Ten champ, Michigan wins. Their non-conference schedule was absolute, to use the Vitale phrase, cupcake city. But they beat the number 2 overall team in the country in the Ohio State and Penn State, and they're undefeated. And as soon as Michigan won and the Novocaine wore off from the root canal, I felt like playing Iowa was. It's like root canal, man. Their defense is lights out.
Tough watch.
I mean, their defense is lights out, and every yard you gain is the toughest yard you've ever gained in your entire life, and they're waiting for you to make the mistake. Yeah. And, I mean, when Michigan got a huge punt return to set up their first touchdown to go up 10-0, I'm like, wow. To beat Iowa in special teams, That's pretty damn rare.
Yeah. It's too bad. Iowa's without their best player, which was a bummer.
Oh, best players.
But,
Right. So, Florida State being without their quarterback, despite being undefeated, despite the ACC being 6-4 against the SEC, and all year long, all we're talking about is the SEC isn't all that great, not compared to the last few years. And I think we can all agree to that. You could see the clouds forming because Washington's in, Michigan's in, and if you're taking Alabama because they're the SEC and it's Sesame Street, and you know how to get to Sesame Street, by the way, this year in terms of the ratings. Every Big Ten team, by the way, and Ohio State, and Michigan included, and Penn State, and Notre Dame, those were the 6 most watched games before you got to any game with the SEC involved. And you know which was the highest ranked SEC involved game prior to this weekend? It was Florida State beating LSU. And by the way, LSU, I believe, by the end of the week, will have a new Heisman Trophy winner in their midst. Don't you believe?
Yep. They also played no defense, lost 3 games, and that was week 1 of the college football season when there was no NFL.
Right. So, but it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter because the kid in Florida State got hurt. So the competition committee or the playoff committee gets together and says 13-0. Yeah, we're just not sending you because you aren't as good as all the other teams. We're taking the best teams. So we're going to take an undefeated Power 5 champ of a conference that was 6-4 against the Sesame Street Conference, unlike any other, and sit them at home and put Alabama in. And I'm sure everybody out there is thinking, oh, well, Rich, you wanted Michigan to play Florida State because that's why you're saying this right now. And, you know, Boo Corrigan of the College Football Playoff Committee said that they had coaches on the committee and they asked them, who do you want to play? Who would you rather not play? And the answer to that came back, well, you'd want to play Florida State because they're less than. And you don't want to play Alabama because that's Nick friggin' Saban coming with Milroe and the rest of this team that is getting better and just beat Georgia. And they're like, oh, okay, so that's a metric of who's better. Let's put Alabama in. And if you're sitting there thinking, I don't want Alabama in the Rose Bowl, you got to play them sometime, right? You got to, what is it? Beat the best to be the best?
To be the man, you got to be
okay.
the man.
Woo! So, fine. And I saw Barstool tweeting out, video of Michigan learning they're playing Alabama.
A lot of groans in there.
Well, you know what? Groans or whatever. What do you want them to do? Cheer? What do you want them to do? Cheer? Then all of a sudden it's like now you're disrespecting the opponent. Now you're and you're saying nothing. No, seriously. Like, what are they going to cheer that it's Florida State? Get out of here. That team is about Michigan versus everybody. That team is about we are number one. They are number one. Number one since 1997. If you're interpreting this like saying bring on Alabama, fine. Bring them on. You got to beat the best. Certainly if this is being decided by the College Football Committee, we're taking the best. Great. And it's going to be an amazing game. It's going to be so much fun. Nick Saban has coached in the Rose Bowl once. It was the BCS championship game in 2010 when they beat Texas of the 2009 season. Do you know the last time Jim Harbaugh was in the Rose Bowl?
Probably when he played, right?
Was my freshman year.
Whoa.
Best Michigan Rose Bowl loss ever because they lost to Arizona State, and Ohio State, getting ready to bounce Earl Bruce, thought, let's get the coach of the team that clearly knows how to beat Michigan. Let's get the coach of Arizona State that beat Jim Harbaugh and Bo Schembechler in the Rose Bowl. That guy's name was John Cooper. Oh, boy. I'm sorry, that gave me a laugh. Certainly since we're seeing John Cooper 2.0 on third base right now. Listen.
Wow.
Listen. This has nothing to do with Alabama making it over Florida State, and I have a problem because Michigan's got to take on Alabama. I can't wait for that game. It's going to be awesome. And if Michigan loses it, again, be that as it may. But Florida State is 13-0 of a Power 5 conference that was 6-4 against the SEC, and you're taking the SEC champion because they're not going to be messed with or trifled with. Greg Sankey may be the commissioner of the future college football playoff world that has everybody in it as a super league. ESPN has a $3 billion deal with SEC football. What, are they going to leave them out?
Well, they're also going to put up a better game.
You could say that, but let me just say this to try and just bring it home, because we got Chris Long coming up. What if there was a committee after Carson Wentz went down? Sorry, Philadelphia, you're just not one of the best teams in the NFC right now because Nick Foles. What are you going to? You're going to win a Super Bowl with Nick Foles? Good luck with that. With everybody else that you got to face.
Yeah, they would have been out. They wouldn't have been out. You wouldn't have taken the Giants either in 2007.
Which is exactly right. So why not give Florida State the chance that they've earned? And the defense had nothing to do with their quarterback's leg becoming kindling. That defense is actually balling the frick out.
Because this is a TV show and nobody wants to watch a 40-point semifinal game.
Unless they can come in and beat Michigan in the Rose Bowl. That's entirely possible. Why isn't it?
With that defense?
And then suddenly it's a magic carpet ride that we're talking about in the same way Eli was and Nick Foles was and Brady was back in the day.
You can't roll the dice and say, well, this could happen.
Sure you can, because the kids have earned it. Because the kids
It's a bad break, and bad breaks are part of sports. But you can't argue that these four are not the four best teams. Georgia's better than Florida State right now also, as evidenced by the 14-point spread.
I can't wait to watch that Orange Bowl now, too, because of that. I mean, you told a 13-0 team that did everything they're supposed to do, sorry, your quarterback got hurt a couple weeks ago, and the three coaches that we reached out to say they'd rather, play them given the opportunity, so let's put in the team that nobody wants to play in Alabama. And by the way, you know who's fourth in the AP rankings is Florida State. Alabama's fifth. There's so much of this that stinks, and I feel for all of the Florida State fans. And obviously I will not be thinking about this when the Rose Bowl hits. Michigan and Alabama and Washington and Texas will be a terrific Sugar Bowl. And, let's see what happens in the Orange Bowl.
I'd be curious if someone still had the calculations that the BCS used to use to put in all the metrics back then and see what the four would have been under that.
Stunk. Nobody had a float.
But they always got it right.
So
it was always the two best teams.
My heart goes out to Seminole Nation.
They beat four top 25 teams, man.
Who did?
Florida State.
Yeah, so did Georgia too. But
But Georgia lost the game.
Washington beat 5 plus Arizona. Maybe they should be number one.
Let me say one last thing. Let me just say one last thing. Washington could be number one. Is what you're saying?
Yeah. If you're just going on who they beat, I honestly
thought that Washington might wind up number one and Michigan would be number two. And fine. And if Alabama was 3 because they think they're technically better than Texas, and at least Texas is in because Texas beat Alabama, and it could have been Michigan 2. And I honestly thought it would be Michigan 2, Alabama 3 when I went to work yesterday. Even though I took I shot a video from my office Saturday night for our YouTube page, and I saw this coming. I'm like, they're not going to put in Florida. The 4 teams should be Michigan, Washington, Texas, Florida State. They won't do it. Watch. And sure enough, it was predictable because nobody's telling the SEC you're out because one of these things is not like the other. Your conference was down, and you don't have an undefeated winner of your conference like the Pac-12, the Big 12, and the Big 10. See ya.
Florida State should be most mad at Auburn for not defending 4th and 31.
Well, that's the other one, too, is that Alabama, you want to talk about the best team? They almost lost to a team that got smoked by New Mexico State. So
4th and 31, Alabama's out because they have 2 losses.
Correct.
That's football.
Well, it's not football. People in a room saying 13-0 teams can't play. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.